You know that feeling when you are getting ready for something you have been looking forward to all year. That was me. 3 weeks ago, preparing for our annual summer family reunion. For the past 10 years, our entire family would gather at Grandma Margaret's lake house for a week of laughter barbecues and catching up. I could already picture my cousins and me staying up late sharing stories about our lives. Something felt different this year, though, and I was about to discover just how different. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button if you have ever dealt with complicated family drama like this. Trust me, you will want to hear how this unfolds. Let me paint you a picture of my family dynamics first. I am Brittany, 28 years old, and I work as a registered nurse at the local hospital. Our family is pretty large, with my grandmother Margaret being the heart of everything at 75 years old. My mom Linda is one of 3 siblings, along with my Aunt Susan and Uncle David. I am the oldest grandchild with my younger sister Harper, who is 24 and works in marketing. Then there are my cousins Tyler from Aunt Susan and Jessica, and Brandon from Uncle David. For a decade, our summer reunion has been the highlight of my year. We would spend a full week at Grandma's beautiful lake house, swimming, playing games, and just enjoying each other's company. It was our sacred family tradition, and I had already requested time off from work months in advance. I was genuinely excited to reconnect with everyone after a busy year of 12-hour nursing shifts and barely seeing my family. But 3 weeks before our planned reunion, everything started to unravel. I was at Harper's apartment helping her move some furniture when I overheard her on a phone call. She was talking about cabin arrangements and packing for warm weather. I was confused because Grandma's lake house did not have cabins, and it was always pretty cool by the lake in the evenings. When Harper hung up, I casually asked her about what cabin she was referring to. The color drained from her face and she started stammering. She tried to brush it off, but I kept pressing. Finally, she let it slip that the family was planning a cruise instead of our usual lake house gathering. A 7-day Caribbean cruise, to be exact. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Cruise. What cruise? Nobody told me about any cruise, I said, staring at Harper in disbelief. She looked incredibly uncomfortable and started explaining that the family had decided to do something different this year. They wanted to try a cruise instead of the same old lake house routine. My mind was racing. When had this decision been made? How long had they been planning this? Why was I just now finding out about it by accident? Harper seemed to realize she had messed up big time because she kept apologizing and saying she thought I already knew. I immediately called my mom to get some answers. Linda picked up on the second ring, and I could hear the discomfort in her voice the moment I mentioned the cruise. She started explaining that the cruise was only for immediate family members, and there were limited spaces available. Mom, I am immediate family. What do you mean? I asked, feeling more confused by the second. She went on to explain that they had booked 6 cabins and they were already filled up. She listed off who was going: Grandma Margaret, my parents, Aunt Susan, and her husband Uncle David, and his wife Tyler, Jessica, Brandon, and Harper. I quickly counted in my head. That is 11 people, Mom. Why am I the only one left out? The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Finally, Linda said in a defensive tone that I was always busy with work anyway, so they figured I would not be able to get time off. That stung more than I can describe. I had never missed a single family gathering. I always made it a priority, even when it meant switching shifts or working extra hours to make up for the time off. The fact that my own family assumed I would be too busy to join them felt like a slap in the face. But the real kicker was yet to come. As I sat there processing this information, I realized they had not even bothered to ask me. They had made this decision without including me in any of the discussions. I was not just uninvited. I was completely forgotten about during the planning process. The next few days were rough as I tried to wrap my head around what had happened. I decided to do some detective work on social media, and what I found made everything so much worse. Jessica had been posting Instagram stories about cruise shopping, showing off new swimsuits and sundresses. The timestamps on these posts went back 3 months. 3 months. They had been planning this for 3 months without saying a word to me. I scrolled further and found photos of Tyler at a travel agency, Aunt Susan posting about passport renewals, and Uncle David sharing articles about Caribbean destinations. There was even evidence of a group chat called Cruise Squad that everyone was part of except me. I tried calling Tyler, who had always been my closest cousin. We grew up together and had always been able to talk about anything. He did not answer my calls, which was unusual for him. When he finally called me back hours later, I could hear the guilt in his voice before he even said hello. "Britt, I am sorry you found out this way," he started. I asked him to explain what had happened, and he revealed something that broke my heart even more. Apparently, I had been included in the initial planning discussions. My name had come up, and they had talked about inviting me. But Aunt Susan had objected, claiming there were budget constraints and that adding another person would make things too complicated. But then Tyler told me the real reason Susan had given for not wanting me there. She had told the family that I always acted like I was better than everyone else and that I would probably judge their vacation choices and spending habits. She painted me as some kind of snob who looked down on family fun. I was speechless. Here I was the person who had helped pay for Harper's wedding decorations, who always brought the most expensive dishes to family potlucks, who never complained when relatives borrowed money and conveniently forgot to pay it back. And somehow, I was the snob. 3 days after my conversation with Tyler, my phone rang with a call from Aunt Susan herself. Her voice was sickeningly sweet, completely different from her usual tone with me. She started off by asking how I was doing and making small talk, which immediately put me on edge because Susan never called just to chat. Then she dropped the bomb. She explained that they had a huge favor to ask of me. Since the cruise was designed for adults and older kids only, they needed someone to watch Max Tyler's 6-year-old son and Emma, Uncle David's 4-year-old daughter. The little ones could not come on the cruise, and they had been struggling to find childcare. "We thought you would be perfect since you are so good with kids, and well, you are not going anyway," Susan said, as if it was the most logical thing in the world. I could not believe what I was hearing. Not only had they excluded me from their family vacation, but now they expected me to provide free babysitting services while they enjoyed themselves on a cruise. But Susan was not done. She sweetened the deal by telling me I could use their pool order takeout on their dime and treat it like my own little staycation. The audacity was breathtaking. They wanted me to watch their children for 7 days straight while they sipped cocktails on a beach somewhere in the Caribbean. I tried to stay diplomatic, telling Susan I would need to think about it. But inside, I was seething. The manipulation was so obvious, yet she delivered it with such casual entitlement that it made my blood boil. Over the next few days, the pressure campaign intensified. Grandma Margaret called to remind me that family helps family, and that the little ones would be so disappointed if they could not stay with their favorite cousin. My mom chimed in, telling me not to make things difficult, and that it was just 1 week. Even Harper sent me a text telling me not to be petty and to think of the kids. I started to see a pattern that had been there all along. I was always the reliable one, the one everyone turned to when they needed something. I was the emergency contact, the backup plan, the person who could be counted on to sacrifice for everyone else's convenience. But when it came to including me in something fun, I was somehow always an afterthought. I thought back to all the times I had been there for this family. I had paid my own way through nursing school while my parents helped Harper with her college expenses. I had worked double shifts to contribute to family events. I had been the designated driver countless times, the one who stayed sober to make sure everyone got home safely. And this was how they repaid my loyalty. I decided I needed to have a face-to-face conversation with Tyler to get the whole truth. I drove to his house on a Saturday morning, hoping to catch him before he got busy with weekend plans. As I approached his front door, I could hear him talking on the phone through the open window. What I heard next changed everything. Tyler was talking to Uncle David, and they were discussing me. I heard Tyler say he still felt bad about the whole situation with me not being invited. David was responding, but I could not hear his part of the conversation clearly. Then Tyler said something that made my blood run cold. Susan's reason was really messed up, Tyler said. She told Mom that Brittany makes too much money and would judge our spending on the cruise. She said Brittany thinks she is too good for family fun because she is a nurse and has her life together. I pressed closer to the window, hardly believing what I was hearing. It got worse. Plus, Susan wanted to invite her new boyfriend Jake instead of Brittany, Tyler continued. She convinced Mom that Brittany would probably say no anyway because she is always working and takes everything too seriously. The final blow came when Tyler added, Susan said the family has more fun when Brittany is not there analyzing everything and making everyone feel bad about their choices. I felt like someone had ripped my heart out of my chest. Not only had I been deliberately excluded, but I had been replaced by some guy Susan had only been dating for 2 months. They had chosen a virtual stranger over their own family member, and they had justified it by painting me as a judgmental, stuck-up person who ruined everyone's good time. I knocked on Tyler's door, and when he answered, his face went white. He knew immediately that I had heard at least part of his conversation. I pushed past him into his living room and demanded he tell me everything. Tyler was clearly uncomfortable, but he confirmed what I had overheard. The family had not excluded me due to space or budget constraints. They had actively chosen to leave me out because Susan had convinced them that I was a negative presence who would diminish their vacation experience. And yes, they had given my spot to Jake, a man none of us had even met. I left Tyler's house and drove straight to Susan's place. I was done with the lies and manipulation. When Susan answered the door, I could see the panic in her eyes. She knew exactly why I was there. I confronted her about everything Tyler had told me, and initially she tried to deny it. But when I pressed harder, she became defensive, and then outright aggressive. The mask finally came off, and I got to see the real Susan. Fine. You want the truth, she snapped. You always act superior with your nursing degree and your savings account. Every family gathering you sit there quietly, judging how the rest of us spend our money. You make everyone feel like they are not good enough. She was just getting started. Jake understands how to have fun. You are always worried about being responsible and making the right choices. Frankly, the family has more fun when you are not there analyzing everything we do and making us feel guilty for not being as perfect as you. The words hit me like physical blows. This woman who I had helped financially, who I had supported through her divorce, who I had treated like a second mother, was telling me that my presence was unwanted because I was too successful and responsible. But Susan was not done destroying me yet. She had one final insult to deliver. "You will still watch the kids, though, right? You owe us that much for all the family support we gave you growing up." The entitlement was staggering. Even after telling me I was unwanted and unwelcome, she still expected me to provide free childcare while they went on their cruise with her boyfriend. It was like she viewed me as some kind of family servant whose job was to be available for their convenience while staying out of the way when they wanted to have fun. I called my mom as soon as I got home, thinking surely she would be appalled by what Susan had said. But Linda immediately became defensive of her sister. She told me Susan did not mean it the way it sounded, and that maybe if I were more flexible, sometimes these situations would not arise. Harper sent me a text that simply said, "Drama much. Just watch the kids and let it go." Tyler called to apologize, but made it clear he was not willing to cancel his cruise plans over this conflict. Even Grandma Margaret, when I finally spoke to her, told me I was being dramatic and that it was just one vacation. I realized I was completely alone in this. The entire family had either participated in excluding me or was willing to overlook the cruelty of it to avoid rocking the boat. They expected me to swallow this disrespect smile and provide free babysitting services, as if nothing had happened. I spent 2 days in complete isolation, thinking deeply about my relationship with my family. I reflected on years of putting their needs before my own, of being the reliable one who never complained, of sacrificing my own wants for family harmony. I realized I had trained them to treat me this way by never setting boundaries or standing up for myself. But I was done being the family doormat. I was done being taken advantage of by people who claimed to love me, but clearly did not respect me. It was time to teach them that my kindness was not weakness, and my reliability was not something they could exploit without consequences. I sent Susan a simple text message. "I will not be babysitting during your cruise. You will need to find alternative arrangements." Her response was immediate and predictably angry. She called me selfish and asked what would happen to the kids. I replied that the children were not my responsibility, that she had chosen this cruise and she could handle the childcare logistics herself. Then I blocked her number. Next, I did something I had never done before. I booked my own vacation during the exact same week as their cruise. I found a beautiful 4-day spa retreat in the mountains, complete with massage therapy, meditation classes, and wellness workshops. If they could prioritize their own happiness, so could I. I posted a subtle Instagram story with a photo of mountain scenery and the caption, "Sometimes the best family time is time away from family." I did not tag anyone or make any direct references to the cruise situation, but I knew they would see it and understand the message. The panicked phone calls started almost immediately. My mom called first, practically begging me to reconsider. She said they had already paid deposits and could not afford to hire professional childcare. I calmly told her I was sure they would figure something out, just like I had always figured things out when they needed me to be flexible. Tyler tried offering me money to babysit completely, missing the point that this was not about compensation. I explained to him that this was about respect and basic human decency, something that apparently had to be earned even within families. The most satisfying call came from Uncle David, who usually stayed out of family drama. He was clearly panicking because they were leaving in 4 days and had no backup plan for childcare. When he tried to guilt me by talking about disappointing the kids, I reminded him that the adults in this situation were the ones who had created the problem through poor planning and disrespectful behavior. In the end, Susan was forced to cancel her boyfriend Jake's spot on the cruise so she could stay home with the children. The irony was perfect. The person she had chosen over me ended up costing her the very vacation she had excluded me to protect. She had to give up her romantic getaway with her new boyfriend to handle the consequences of her own actions. I left for my spa retreat feeling empowered for the first time in years. I spent 4 peaceful days getting massages, practicing meditation, and journaling about my experiences. I met other women who had similar stories about family dynamics and learned that what I was going through was more common than I had realized. During a therapy session offered at the spa, I worked with a counselor who specialized in family boundaries. She helped me understand that I did not have to earn love by being useful, and that healthy relationships required mutual respect. I learned tools for communicating my needs clearly and for recognizing when people were trying to manipulate me. When the family returned from their cruise, the tension was thick. Susan was still angry and tried to continue her guilt trip campaign, but I had new tools for dealing with her manipulation. Harper, surprisingly, was the first to admit that they had treated me unfairly. She apologized genuinely and said seeing how they had responded to my absence made her realize how much they had taken me for granted. Tyler took longer to come around, but eventually he acknowledged that they had handled the situation poorly from the beginning. He promised that future family decisions would include me in the planning stages rather than treating me as an afterthought. Grandma Margaret was the hardest to win over, but even she eventually admitted that maybe they had taken my reliability for granted over the years. My mom was slower to change, but she gradually began to respect my new boundaries. I established some new family rules moving forward. I would no longer automatically say yes to every request for help. Family planning would include everyone from the beginning, and decisions would be made transparently. Most importantly, I would not tolerate disrespectful behavior just to keep the peace. The family dynamics did gradually improve as everyone adjusted to my new boundaries. They learned to appreciate my contributions instead of expecting them, and they started including me in decisions instead of assuming they knew what I wanted. Looking back, I learned that saying no to disrespect means saying yes to self-respect. I discovered that family love should not come with conditions or exploitation attached to it. Sometimes the people who claim to love you most are the ones who need to learn how to treat you better, and sometimes you have to teach them by walking away. I am not bitter about what happened. Instead, I am grateful that it opened my eyes to patterns that had been hurting me for years. I learned that I deserve to be valued for who I am, not just for what I can provide to others. And I learned that real family love includes respect, consideration, and genuine care for each other's feelings. Has anyone else dealt with family members who take your kindness for granted? Let me know in the comments how you handled setting boundaries with people you love. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about navigating complicated relationships. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to stand up for yourself even when it feels uncomfortable. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that you deserve to be treated with respect by the people who claim to love you. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video.